Red Bull is tired of winning, at least according to Lewis Hamilton's exposé. After securing at least one win in every season from his debut in 2007 until 2021, Hamilton is on track to finish a second consecutive year without a win at the upcoming Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Despite Hamilton's winless streak at the penultimate round in Saudi Arabia in 2021, his former title rival Max Verstappen has dominated, winning 43 out of the last 65 races since the start of his championship-winning campaign. Verstappen made history earlier this season by achieving an unprecedented feat of 10 consecutive wins between Miami and Monza. Furthermore, just last month, he surpassed his own 2022 record for the most wins by a driver in a single campaign. Earning his 19th victory of 2023 in Abu Dhabi would propel Verstappen ahead of Sebastian Vettel in the list of all-time Grand Prix winners, leaving only Hamilton and Michael Schumacher ahead of him. During the onset of F1's V6 hybrid era in 2014, Hamilton had his own era of dominance, clinching 6 titles in 7 years, and consistently securing at least 9 Grand Prix victories each season. Approaching the second anniversary of the infamous 2021 Abu Dhabi GP, where he was controversially dethroned by Verstappen, the 38-year-old Hamilton is eager to break his longest winless streak in his career. He believes that Horner's reactions to Verstappen's victories over team radio indicate that the joy of winning diminishes when the novelty wears off. He expressed this sentiment during an interview with Channel 4, saying, "You approach every year exactly the same. Still prepare myself, still train. If anything, you deep dive a bit more, you try to pay attention to more. I think through adversity and through this experience for 2 years, I feel like I've learned a huge amount as a driver. Not necessarily on track, but particularly off track in terms of how I engage with everyone, and I like to think that's a real positive. And also, when you have so much success, no matter how hard you try, it's hard to keep things in perspective. I even hear it in Christian Horner's voice when Max wins. He doesn't know what to say. He's like, 'Here we go again. Good job, Max. Good job.' The excitement goes, but when you first get that win, it's amazing. But if you have it all the time, it's not the same. Of course I want to win again. I do feel like when we do win again, the feeling is going to be even greater, because everyone struggled." Reports suggest that Max Verstappen had a sit-down with F1 to express his thoughts on the Las Vegas Grand Prix. His less than enthusiastic comments leading up to the race weekend led to a meeting with an F1 representative, as reported by the Dutch publication De Telegraaf. As the weekend kicked off, the 3-time world champion emerged as the most outspoken critic. Verstappen didn't hold back, labeling the Las Vegas Grand Prix, touted as F1's new pinnacle event, as more of a spectacle than a true racing experience, a sentiment that clearly didn't resonate well with the Dutch driver. Not thrilled about having to stand on a raised platform and flash a smile at the crowd during Wednesday's launch party, Verstappen didn't mince words when expressing his discontent. The reigning world champion said, "For me, you can skip this. We are just standing up there, looking like a clown. I mean, yeah, some people like the show a bit more. I don't like it at all. I grew up just watching the performance side of things, and that's how I see it as well. So for me, I like to be in Vegas, but not so much for racing. We are not a stakeholder, so we just go with it. They decide what they do, right? I would do the same if I was the owner. I wouldn't listen to the drivers. It's my sport. I would do with it what I want if that would be the case." Verstappen didn't shy away from classifying the Las Vegas circuit as National League, placing it in a different league compared to the Premier League status he attributed to the Monaco GP circuit. In a fervent monologue during the driver's press conference, he passionately outlined the kinds of venues that evoke his love for F1, and unfortunately, Las Vegas didn't make the cut. According to De Telegraaf, Verstappen had a meeting with someone from F1 just a few hours before Sunday's Grand Prix. It's not entirely clear whether F1 initiated the meeting or if Verstappen himself requested it. Verstappen's father, Jos, shared with the newspaper that he thought his son could have approached the situation with more diplomacy in expressing himself, saying, "I do think he can say things, but in this case, in a neater way. I told him that directly. Once in a while, he needs that too. I also think the battery is running out a bit, with a lot of people, but that Max likes racing, you saw that today. I do understand his opinion, but you can't kick blindly at everything." In other news, Le Mans winner Richard Bradley criticizes Sergio Perez's lack of defense against Charles Leclerc on the final lap of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, describing it as a display of racecraft that even a 13-year-old racer would find embarrassing. Bradley believes that if Perez had not already secured the runner-up spot in the F1 2023 driver's standings, his non-defensive move against Leclerc in the Las Vegas Grand Prix would have been the final nail in the coffin for his Red Bull career. In the recent episode of the On Track GP podcast, Bradley expressed his frustration with Perez's subpar racecraft. Following Perez being overtaken by Fernando Alonso on the final lap of the previous race in Brazil, Bradley interprets Perez's lack of defensive moves as a clear indication that his confidence has hit rock bottom. When I was karting, my dad used to record all of my races with a handheld camera, so we could watch them back. There was one race when I was 13 where I was really stupid and knew I'd made a mistake afterwards, and I didn't block in a very similar way to Perez on the last lap when I was leading, and 5 karts went by me. I learned some new words when I watched that video back. For a 13-year-old, that was some mature language, but I deserved it, and Perez's non-defense was identical. That shouldn't be happening when you're 13 years old, let alone when you're in Formula 1. For him to have made that mistake, honestly, he's lucky that he's already secured second in the championship. Honestly, for me, if he didn't come second, then this would have been the final nail in the coffin, because that shows that the confidence is just completely and utterly deflated. That was so poor. Richard Bradley isn't the only one who has threatened Perez's seat. F1 presenter Will Buxton has warned the Mexican driver that his seat is not safe, hinting that the only suitable replacement for the departed Daniel Ricciardo at Red Bull is none other than Daniel Ricciardo himself. Perez has faced heightened scrutiny in the latter part of the season due to his performances not aligning with those of his teammate Max Verstappen. While the Mexican is contracted to Red Bull for another season, growing speculation suggests that Perez might not retain his seat until then. Red Bull finds itself in the enviable position of having an abundance of talented drivers, but a limited number of available seats. The competition for the 4 seats under the team's control is fierce, with Verstappen, Perez, Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda, and Liam Lawson all vying for a spot. Only Verstappen's seat is secure, as the Dutchman is committed until 2028. When Ricciardo rejoined the team this year, many speculated that he was being considered for a return to the primary seat. Buxton shares this impression, as he mentioned on the Fast and the Curious podcast. For as long as Daniel's sitting in that AlphaTauri, he is not going to be safe, because the only reason Daniel's there is to put pressure on him. And I think Red Bull has probably come to the realization that the only driver who can replace Daniel is Daniel. If Daniel gets back to Daniel's form of old, then they'll stick him in the car next to Max, because they were the best driver lineup that they've had in terms of a 2-driver team, I think ever, and Daniel really played nicely with Max, and Max looked up to and respected Daniel. I don't think it'd be quite the same now, because Max has elevated himself to a level that's beyond almost any driver in Formula 1. If Checo can't maintain a consistent performance, and that consistent performance has to be consistent P2s, because that is the best car in the field. The minimum expectation of that car is P2, and if you're not getting P2, then what are you doing? You know, why are you there? And they will ask themselves those questions. What do you think? Is Sergio Perez's racecraft worse than a 13-year-old's? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell